The years that followed their defiant flight were not a fairy tale, but a life built on solid rock and honest labor. The cabin, nestled like a defiant outpost in the embrace of the Cascade Mountains, was a place where every nail driven, every log notched, was a shared memory and a quiet testament to a love forged in opposition. The raw, early passion between Elara and Silas deepened into an enduring, quiet devotion, a partnership of equals under the unforgiving, yet breathtaking sky. Elara was unrecognizable as the timid girl who once played hymns without heart. Her hands, once soft for the piano keys, were now capable and strong, equally adept at stitching a tear in Silas's oilskin coat or cleaning a freshly dressed deer. She was a woman carved from the wilderness, her fear replaced by a fierce, practical competence. Asher, now 8, was a quiet, sturdy echo of his father, learning the language of the forest, the careful, selective stewardship of the land. Lily, 4, was all bright, unrestrained laughter, a living banner of the freedom her mother had chosen, her songs chasing away the somber memories of Pine Creek. Their life was a culture of stewardship, a quiet rebellion against the rampant consumption and clear-cutting that defined the big lumber companies. Their isolation was their shield and their strength, but the world, like the Pacific Northwest winter, always found a way to encroach upon the beautiful, fragile things they built. One spring thaw, nearly a decade after her flight, Silas returned from the 2-day round trip to Oak Haven for supplies, his face grim, carrying a single heavy envelope. It bore the unmistakable return address of the Pine Creek Ecclesiastical Council. "The old man is fading," Silas announced, snapping the official seal. "Pastor Abner Vance is ill, critically so. Deacon Miller is managing his affairs and, ostensibly, the chapel's assets." The letter detailed a legal maneuver, a petition to confirm the church's ownership of a disputed, crucial logging easement that ran directly through the heart of Silas's prime timber claim. This piece of land, known locally as the Cedar Knoll easement, was the only viable route to move the high-grade cedar Silas selectively harvested. The Miller family, no doubt urged on by Elias Miller, her pale, nervous, and now vengeful former fiancé, intended to auction the easement to the highest bidder. If they succeeded, the easement would go to Consolidated Timber, which would immediately clear-cut the entire path, severing Silas's operation and destroying his dream of sustainable forestry forever. The final judgment from Pastor Vance was not a curse on her soul, but a physical assault on the foundation of her new life. Elara felt a cold dread that turned instantly into a furious determination. The choice was stark: face the father she chose to lose, or lose the future she fought to gain. "He can't forgive me, so he'll try to destroy you," Elara said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "It's the final judgment, delivered by proxy by the deacon." Silas placed the document on the rough-hewn table. "The claim is solid, but the paperwork is messy and old. If we want to save it, we have to go back to Pine Creek. We have to face the deacon, and you have to face your ghost, Elara." Elara walked over to the window, watching Asher carefully split kindling, and Lily tried to pet a nervous doe at the edge of the woods. "We go," she declared, turning back, her eyes shining with the clear, unyielding light of resolve. "But we don't go to apologize or beg. We go to claim what is ours. We will remind the deacon that even in his rigid devotion, my father prized the truth above greed. Are you ready for the ultimate showdown? Lara's courage is about to be tested. Tap here to share this chapter and tell us what you would say to Deacon Miller. The journey back was the truest measure of how far she had traveled. This time, the wagon was heavy with their purpose and the sound of their children's chatter. When they crested the final ridge and saw Pine Creek huddled under its low, perpetual cloud ceiling, the town seemed smaller, grayer, and the chapel spire more imposing than she remembered. The shock of their arrival was immediate. Whispers followed their wagon like smoke from a fresh burn. They stayed at a small, anonymous inn on the edge of town. Elara refused to hide. She walked the main street, her strong, capable hands holding Lily's soft one, Silas's solid presence always near. She faced the judgmental glances of the congregation, allowing them to stare at the living proof of her sin, a happy, flourishing family. The atmosphere was oppressive, but she wore her defiance like a heavy, rich cloak. The people of Pine Creek hadn't changed, but she had grown too large for their judgment to contain her. At the general store, the air grew instantly silent when she entered. Mr. Higgins, now older and frailer, recognized her instantly. He looked at Silas, then at the children, and finally his gaze softened as he met Lara's eyes. "Lara Vance," he managed, pushing a sack of flour across the counter. "You've been well?" "We've been well, Mr. Higgins," she corrected, letting him see the quiet strength in her smile. He leaned in conspiratorially. "The deacon, he's been overreaching, child. He and Elias want that land for the money, pure and simple. Claim it's for the new steeple fund. But we all know where that money ends up." He glanced around nervously. "Be careful, Lara. They've twisted every law to fit their piety." "They twisted one too many, Mr. Higgins," Lara said, her voice steady. She saw a flicker of hope in his tired eyes, a hope that someone would finally stand up to the chapel's quiet tyranny. She knew her fight wasn't just for Silas's claim, it was for the quiet soul of the town. The confrontation with Deacon Miller and Elias was set for a meeting in the chapel's vestry the following morning. Lara insisted on facing them alone first, wanting to disarm them with her singular, unyielding strength. Silas waited just outside the double doors, a silent, immovable guard. Lara entered the room. Deacon Miller sat rigidly behind a polished mahogany desk, his posture a fortress of self-righteousness. Elias Miller hovered nervously nearby, clutching a briefcase that smelled exactly of ink and anxiety. "Elara," the deacon sneered, using her childhood name, a calculated attempt to reduce her to the girl he remembered. "I trusted you would have the decency to remain in your wilderness. Your return is an unwelcome distraction to your father's final days." "I came back to protect my home, Deacon," Lara replied, sitting calmly, but not relaxing. "And to warn you. The clear-cutting of that easement will devastate the watershed and ruin the land. You may call it the Lord's will, but it is simple, greedy theft. It is not stewardship, and you know my father, Pastor Vance, would never stand for it." Elias, pale and sweating, stepped forward, his voice cracking. "The legal claim is sound. The land was never rightfully Silas's. He has no moral or legal standing in this community. Moral standing is earned by how you treat the earth and your neighbor, Elias, not by how often you kneel," Lara countered, her words sharp and precise. "And the legal claim, much like your life, is built on fear and expectation. Did you truly believe I wouldn't look deeper?" Lara pulled out a copy of the original claim deed, authenticated by the clerk in Oakhaven, which she and Silas had unearthed from their cabin archives. It was a faded, brittle document, but the words were clear. "You focused on the easement's transfer to the church," Lara explained, leaning forward, her gaze locking with the deacon's. "But you missed the stipulation, a carefully worded but ignored clause from the original owner, a clause my father, Pastor Vance, deliberately left unresolved." She tapped the parchment. The deed contained a stipulation that tied the easement's ownership to the Vance family's direct lineal claim, if the land was ever used for clear-cutting in violation of original stewardship terms. My father knew your greed, Deacon. Even in his moral rigidity, he set a final, silent snare. He never finalized the sale because he did not trust you to protect God's creation. Her voice dropped to a triumphant, devastating whisper. "The easement reverts to the living Vance kin, the kin who are actively stewarding the land. The moment the church tries to sell it for destructive logging, I am that kin, and Silas and I will ensure that land remains whole." Deacon Miller's face went slack with shock. The church's greed, channeled through the deacon, had finally overreached. His piety had blinded him to the meticulousness of the man he was supposed to be honoring. Elias sank back into his chair, defeated. "This is an outrage!" the deacon thundered, finding his voice. "A spiritual corruption. Your father would disown you." "He already did, Deacon," Lara said simply, rising to her feet. "And look how well I turned out. Have you ever had to expose a hypocrite to protect something you love? Let Lara know she did the right thing. Click here to share this chapter with someone who appreciates justice." Lara's legal victory was complete, but she had one more, final encounter. She walked into the dim, hushed room where her father lay. The scent of sickness mingled with the faint, cold scent of the chapel. Pastor Abner Vance looked up, his eyes glassy, his breathing labored. The sight of her still drew a flicker of the old anger, a slight tightening of his mouth. "The land is safe, Father," Lara told him gently. She stood over him, tall and unbowed. "I kept your intention. I stopped the destruction. The stewardship clause is enforced. You and Deacon Miller won't have to answer for ruining the cedar knoll." She didn't wait for his condemnation or his blessing. Instead, she knelt, not in prayer, but to place a small, smooth river stone, a gift from Asher, polished by the wild creek outside their cabin, on his bedside table. "I left this town because you taught me that fear was holiness," she whispered, her voice cracking only slightly. "I found my true faith in the forest, in the strength of my husband, Silas, and in the laughter of my children, Lily and Asher. We are not lost, we are found, and we are happy." She paused, looking at his face, searching for any sign of recognition beyond the judgment. He could not speak an apology or a forgiveness, but he could witness her strength. His hand, frail and thin, moved almost imperceptibly, his index finger twitching, not in anger, but perhaps in a final, silent acknowledgement that the spirit he had tried to cage had finally found its true home. She stood, turned her back on the chapel, and walked out into the sunlight, leaving the silence, the judgment, and the past behind her for good. Silas was waiting, leaning against the wagon, his profile framed by the dark pines, his gaze intensely fixed on the chapel door. When she emerged, he pushed off the wood and walked to meet her. He didn't ask what happened. He simply looked at her face, reading the mingled exhaustion and triumph there. "We go home," he said, his voice deep and certain, his hand reaching for hers. Lily ran to her, her small arms wrapping tight around Lara's skirt, demanding to be lifted. Asher nodded gravely, recognizing the gravity of the moment and the quiet victory his mother had won. As the wagon wheels rolled over the muddy track, leaving Pine Creek in the rear view, Lara settled against Silas. She felt the weight of their combined history, the youthful defiance, the hard years of building, the painful reckoning of the last 2 days, settle comfortably within her soul. The road out of Pine Creek was no longer a path of desperate flight, but a path of ownership, paved with the courage of her own convictions. She had returned to the place of her drowning and found the fierce, enduring current of her own soul. Her story was not just about finding love, but about finding the courage to defend that love, not with force, but with the quiet, devastating truth. The wild, unknown future had delivered its promise, and she was ready for all the labor and all the joy that remained. The chapel was behind her. Her home, her husband, and her future were riding beside her. Her life was a masterpiece of defiance, and it was glorious. What does true peace look like after such a battle? Now that Lara and Silas have secured their land, what challenges await their growing family in the unforgiving Pacific Northwest? Leave a comment below, telling us what you want to see happen next for Lara, Silas, Asher, and Lily.